They returned this dog to the shelter for being too big. You won't believe what happened next. When Max first arrived at the shelter, he was just a little pup, filled with boundless energy and curiosity. His big brown eyes were full of hope, and his tiny tail wagged constantly. He hadn't yet learned the harshness of the world, but the shelter felt like a safe haven for now. He was placed in a cozy kennel with soft bedding, and the staff made sure to give him plenty of attention. Max was eager to please, always jumping up to greet anyone who came near his cage. He didn't know it yet, but this shelter would be the place where his journey began. Though it was crowded with other animals, Max seemed to stand out. There was something special about him, a certain quiet intelligence in his gaze, a calmness beneath his puppy energy. He had a way of winning hearts without even trying. The volunteers, the keepers, and the visitors couldn't help but smile when they saw him. It was clear that he had a good soul, one that would make him a perfect companion. But Max's days at the shelter weren't going to be easy, and as time passed, the reality of his future was starting to become unclear. After weeks of waiting, Max's moment finally came. One sunny afternoon, a young couple walked into the shelter, their eyes scanning the rows of cages. They seemed uncertain, as if they weren't sure what kind of dog they were looking for. And then, their gaze landed on Max. His big brown eyes locked with theirs, and it was like an unspoken connection had been made. The couple knelt down to greet him, and Max immediately perked up, wagging his tail with excitement. He sniffed their hands, nuzzled into their legs, and it was clear Max knew this was the moment he'd been waiting for. The couple smiled, their faces lighting up. "We'll take him," they said without hesitation. Max's heart raced with joy. He was finally going home. The staff helped prepare him for his new life, attaching a collar with a shiny tag, and as they opened the gate to his kennel, Max bounded out, his paws light and eager. In that moment, it felt like everything had fallen into place. Max was no longer just another dog in a shelter. He was someone's family, someone's companion. He didn't know it yet, but his new life was about to begin. As the days passed, the couple's excitement began to shift. At first, everything seemed perfect. Max had quickly settled into his new home. His energy was infectious, and his playful antics brought laughter to the house. But as time went on, something started to change. Max, who had once been a small, fluffy puppy, was growing, and fast. He quickly outgrew the small yard they had in their suburban neighborhood. His once playful zoom eyes now turned into full-speed sprints, knocking over furniture in the house. His boundless energy was no longer endearing but overwhelming. He wasn't just big in size. His presence started to feel like too much. The couple tried everything they could to manage him. They took him for longer walks, tried to tire him out with toys, but Max's energy never seemed to subside. The man of the house, who had initially been the one to fall in love with Max's playful spirit, now found himself overwhelmed by the dog's strength and stamina. It became too difficult to keep up with him. Max's behavior was not the problem, it was his size. He was simply too big for their lifestyle. One evening, the couple sat down together, torn between their love for Max and the reality of their living situation. And then, with heavy hearts, they made the decision. Max had to go back to the shelter. It wasn't because he wasn't a good dog. Far from it. But the decision was made based on the misconception that a dog's size could define his place in a home. Max was returned to the shelter, confused and heartbroken, not understanding why his family no longer wanted him. When Max was returned to the shelter, it was as if the light had dimmed in his eyes. The same staff members who had once cheered for his adoption now watched him with a quiet sadness. They knew Max deserved better than this. They couldn't understand how anyone could return him simply because of his size. But they weren't ready to give up on him. Max wasn't just another dog to them. He was a survivor, a dog with a spirit that hadn't been broken, even after all he'd been through. The shelter workers knew that Max needed a home, but he needed the right one. Instead of placing him in a kennel and leaving him to languish, they decided to focus on Max's strengths. They spent more time training him, helping him channel his energy into positive outlets. He became more sociable, more relaxed, and, despite his size, he started to show what he was truly capable of. He was ready for a second chance, and this time, the shelter was going to make sure it was with the right family, one that would embrace him no matter how big he got. Months passed. He had adjusted well to life at the shelter, but there was still an air of uncertainty about his future. His size continued to be a challenge for potential adopters, and the shelter was beginning to wonder if anyone would ever see past it. Then, one day, a family walked through the doors, and everything changed. They were a couple with grown children, experienced dog owners who had always cared for larger breeds. When they saw Max, they didn't hesitate. It wasn't about how big he was, or how much space he took up. They looked at his eyes, at the way his tail wagged as he approached them, and they saw a dog with a loving heart, full of potential. The family took their time with Max, walking him through the shelter grounds, letting him show off his energy and personality. They quickly realized that Max wasn't a problem to be managed. He was a companion to be cherished. The couple made the decision to adopt him, and this time, it wasn't because they were hoping to change him. It was because they accepted him for who he was. Max, who had once been returned for being too big, now had a home where he was loved not in spite of his size, but because of it. His new family knew that size was just a number. Love was what truly mattered. Max's new family quickly became everything he had longed for. They saw beyond the surface, beyond his size, and accepted him fully. He wasn't a burden, he was a blessing. In his new home, Max thrived. His energy, once seen as a nuisance, became a cherished part of the household. He had a family that could keep up with him, that loved him for who he was, not for what he could fit into. His days were filled with adventure, play, and affection. Max would leap into their arms, eager for attention, and the family would gladly give it. They took him to the park every weekend, watched as he raced through fields, his powerful body, a testament to the strength he had always carried inside. He was not just a big dog, he was the heart of the home. The family knew they had made the right decision. They often shared their story with friends and family, urging them to adopt dogs like Max, dogs that may not fit the typical mold but are perfect in their own way. Max had become more than just their pet. He had become a symbol of unconditional love and acceptance, reminding everyone who met him that size doesn't define love. Max had finally found the place where he belonged, and it was more than just a home. It was love, pure and simple.